Let's get right into the comparison between the Blackberry Z10 and the iPhone 5. So the first thing that we'll take a look at is the actual physical dimensions of both these devices. Now, as you can see right over here, you'll see that the Blackberry Z10 is just a bit taller and wider than the iPhone 5, measuring 130 millimeters in height and 65.6 millimeters on the width. Now, in terms of thickness, the Blackberry Z10 is just a bit thicker than the iPhone 5, measuring about 9 millimeters versus the iPhone 5's 7.6 millimeters. Furthermore, the iPhone 5 is just a bit lighter than the Z10, measuring about 112 grams versus the Z10's 138 grams. Now, moving on to the screens themselves on these devices, the iPhone has a 4-inch screen and the Z10 has a 4.2-inch screen. Now, in terms of resolution, the iPhone's display is 1136 by 640 and the Z10's display is a higher resolution of 1280 by 768. Additionally, the Z10 has a higher PPI rating of 356 versus the iPhone's 326. But both of the screens are really nice. They're both very contrasty, very vibrant, and they both have a really fine pixel per square inch ratio. And of course, the Blackberry has a little bit of an edge in terms of resolution, but in reality the screens look very similar. Now, another thing that these phones have in common is the hardware inside. They both have a dual-core processor. Now, the Blackberry does have a higher dual-core processor in terms of clock speed, clocked in at about 1.5 gigahertz versus the iPhone's 1.3 gigahertz, and it does have twice the amount of RAM with 2 gigs of RAM. And the nice thing is you can actually use that RAM to do a lot of great multitasking, because the actual system for multitasking on the new Blackberry 10 OS is actually really good and quite a lot better than the iOS system of multitasking that we have right now, where it gives you a better view of what applications are actually running in the background compared to the iOS icon system that has been there for a very long time. Another nice feature about the Z10 is that it has 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi support, so it's just matching the iPhone with that feature. So why don't we go ahead and do a quick web browser test and see which device loads up some pages faster. So why don't we just start out with a really simple website. We'll go to instafuse.com, which is our website, and it's kind of working in the process. Very small website, and as you can see, the Blackberry 10 just loads it up just a fraction of a second faster, but they're both very similar. Next, let's just try the YouTube mobile site. And this time you saw that the iPhone loads up the page just a bit faster. I think these phones are really similar in terms of most Wi-Fi speeds and browsing performance. There is, however, a difference when you start loading up some applications. So let's just go ahead and open up the Facebook app on both of these devices, and you saw right there the iPhone loads it up a bit quicker than the Z10. And now when we open up Twitter, you find the same result again, where the iPhone is loading that application quite a bit quicker than the Z10. Now, this may have to do with a couple of things. Maybe the integration of the application to the hardware and OS isn't that great. The iPhone is the most mature OS and mobile platform out there because it's been out the longest, so they've really had time to perfect the device with all these different major applications. But the other thing that may be slowing down the Z10 is its fancy animation that it does when you open up any kind of application. You can see that there's a window pop up and then it does some kind of animation, which may be slowing down the entire process of opening that application versus the iPhone's application just pops up instantly. Now, of course, it's important to understand that this is an early device, a brand new OS. Blackberry is definitely going to do some updates and modifications to the OS and going to get a lot of user feedback to make a much better OS than what you see over here. And this notion is fairly apparent when we start comparing the application stores of both these devices. Now, the App Store on the iPhone has roughly about 700,000 applications, which is huge compared to the 90,000 application that's available on the BlackBerry World store that's in the Blackberry Z10. Of course, it has a lot of mainstream apps like your Twitter and Facebook, but there's a lot of apps pending, such as if you're a big Instagram user, it's currently not available on the Blackberry Z10. But of course, I'm sure more and more applications every month and every week will be added, and hopefully that application library will grow as more people get the phone. The other big difference between the iPhone and the Z10 is its voice command system. Now, the iPhone, of course, is famously using Siri, which is very capable of doing many different things, and the Z10 has a really primitive voice command system. So if you ask it some simple questions such as, "What's the weather like tomorrow?"
nice weather coming up tomorrow. Up to 6 degrees and sunny.
Now when we ask the same question to the BlackBerry, what's the weather like tomorrow?
Do you want to search the internet for what's the weather like tomorrow? Searching the internet for what's the weather like tomorrow.
What are the show times for tonight?
Checking for movies. I found quite a number of movies playing nearby today. Do you want to search the internet for what is the show times for tonight?
And no matter what questions I ask the BlackBerry, it'll pretty much give the same answer where it just wants to search Google for the answer. So therefore on the voice command side, the iPhone is heads and shoulders beyond what the BlackBerry Z10 can do. Now let's go ahead and compare the cameras on both these devices. Let's first take a look at the front-facing camera of the Z10 and iPhone. And as you can see from the side-by-side comparison, they're really similar. They both shoot 720p, and there's really not a big difference between the two. And they are actually really great cameras for FaceTime, video conferencing, or Skype, or anything like that. And it's great that the Z10 matches the iPhone in terms of image quality on the front-facing side. The rear-facing camera on the iPhone is definitely better than the rear-facing camera on the Z10. They both shoot 1080p, but the image quality is much more accurate and better in terms of exposure on the iPhone. But they're overall pretty similar, and to the average person, they're pretty good-looking video cameras for a cell phone. Here's a little side-by-side comparison of the stills capability of the rear-facing camera, and we can see that the iPhone 5 again has better exposure, better metering system, which renders out details a little bit clearly, and the lens is definitely better on the iPhone 5. But the Z10 is not that bad, and when we go 100% crop, you can see a good amount of detail on both images. Now let's talk about the most important things on a smartphone these days, which is battery life. Now the battery life on the Z10 is not going to break any records or anything like that. It's rated for 10 hours, but most people on the internet, including myself and a whole bunch of other people's, got about 8 hours, which is pretty similar to what the iPhone gets. And even though the battery is a bit larger, 1800 milliamp hours versus 1440 milliamp hours on the iPhone, real-world tests really show that you get about 8 hours of talk time on the Z10, which is pretty much the same on the iPhone 5, which is pretty easy to understand since we know that the Z10 has a larger 4.2-inch screen, maybe even a more power-hungry processor, and both phones have LTE speed. So in terms of network connectivity and talk time and overall battery life, they're really going to be quite similar. Now at this point you may be saying that the Z10 is really losing out the fight between the iPhone 5, but there is a secret weapon that the Z10 has, which is the fact that it is a BlackBerry, and therefore it has a user replaceable battery as well as expandable memory, which in my opinion deserves some huge praise because you can carry multiple batteries with you if you're going on a long trip, and you can expand that memory up to 64 gigs via micro SD card, which is a huge advantage when we start comparing it to the iPhone, which has none of these features. But overall, I think these phones are really quite similar. They have a lot of interesting features, distinct advantages between both of the phones. In a lot of cases, the iPhone, because of its maturity, offers a lot of things that the BlackBerry simply can't do due to its situation right now. But if you are interested in getting it, I would definitely recommend taking a look at it, see if you like it for yourself, and it is a matter of personal opinion in terms of aesthetic and styling, and the BlackBerry does have some unique advantages that makes it quite attractive if you're kind of tired of iPhone or Android, or you don't want to go to Windows. This is a